video that deals with Plato's cavern allegory, where enslaved men who may be sitting on these very seats in a cave like this are injected, or given, better said, a vision of the world in which they will be trapped and which they will never be able to escape. Now then, if one of these men comes out of the cave and sees reality and daylight, shows him a different reality, and sees that this may help him put an end to the slavery of his cave pals, this man will attempt to go back to the cave and tell his former enslavery colleagues what the right path is. The interesting thing about this video is to see how the companions react. They won't believe him, they will go after him, and they will end up killing him and crucifying him. This is the cave allegory that brings images from Matrix, and which is very appropriate for this talk, because what brings us here together is a taxation system to achieve it, as if a taxation system to have a free men's society, an egalitarian society, were something new. Precisely what I want to prove through this presentation is that this is absolutely old. It is the very first regime that ever existed in mankind's history. That is, man in natural state, as Thomas Hobbes says. Men in this natural state don't kill each other, they coexist, they cohabit, they cooperate, and any society that
poder sustentar un sistema jurídico jerárquico, o lo que Fred Harrison llamará la cultura predadora, ¿no? Entonces, lógicamente, al desplazar este conocimiento de nuestros ambientes académicos, lo que tenemos es una sociedad terriblemente desigual. Entonces, ¿podés pasar a la segunda? De esa desigualdad surge esta situación.
These situations portrayed here on the picture are commonplace in Latin America and result from that. This is, for example, the Morumbi borough in Sao Paulo. If we were to have a look of Rio de Janeiro, that wonderful city, paradise on earth, we'll see a coastline with buildings like those that you can see on screen. It's a true beauty, but behind the hills, there are 900 slums or favelas with a 50-kilometer diameter. That's the extent of inequality and conflict present in Brazil today. And it's the same type of conflict we have here in Argentina. I live in La Plata, and as I drive to Buenos Aires, I drive past a private estate and a slum, then another gated community, and then another slum. That's unavoidable. Of course, inequality is the mother of all forms of violence. That's why Fred Harrison's talk was ideal to me yesterday, in the sense that I agree that these situations bring about civil war. And the only way to bring civil war to stop is through a war amongst nations. That's why this possibility of the Third World War being so close. The only way states have to bring civil war to an end, or bring self-destruction to an end, is by entering into conflict with a neighboring country. These are the consequences. What is that? Well, that's it might be a picture from Sao Paulo, or it might be a picture from Rio de Janeiro. It might well be, or it might be Los Angeles, as we recall from 2 years ago, or in the outskirts of Paris. However, this picture was taken a couple of months ago in London. So no one is alien to this situation, even if there are no slums in London or Paris. The path to hell and the fact that we are transforming paradise into hell may take place through the body of rules and legislation implemented in society. Notice that back in the year 400, St. Augustine said, history is essentially, made speaking, a constant struggle between two cities, two legal systems. One that leads to the city of God, that is that social arrangement which results in brotherhood, equality, and freedom, and the other, the devil's city, or civitas diaboli, the society that is scourged by slavery, inequality, and civil war. These events have been often discussed in the history of mankind. I mean, why moving from a proper to an improper legal system? Well, it took place in the time of the Egyptians, of the Greeks, the Romans, and once again in the 19th century. I would like to mention now Carl von Savigny, who in his writing, The Vocation of Our Century Towards Legislation and Case Law, written back in the 19th century, mind you, I mean, he did not witness the 20th century, and I wrote the date there to show that back in 1853 lots of things happened. Carl von Savigny says in his writing, a code, and mind you, the word code, gene code and evolution come from moral sciences. They are precisely used by Darwin to explain biological processes. And unfortunately, Darwin not only took them from Scottish moral experts, but took them for him forever. Notice what happened, or what a code was for these Scottish thinkers. A code should not contain but for the principles that give rise to the decisions of the different fields of expertise, because the science of law, like geometry, supersedes and is based on foundational principles. Had Savigny not said this in 1850-something, but in 1950, he would have said, because the science of law, like the biological science, instead of geometry, is based on genes that gave rise to the evolution of different subsystems, cultural, economic, etc. This was clearly and thoroughly developed by biology, since in each and every of our millions of cells, we have the same chromosome. A same chromosome which is replicated in each and every of our cells, and in turn each of our and every of our cells will play different roles and have different functions. That's there is a foundational and principle which will generate different things in our body, in our biology, but which played the same role in the body of rules. Who interprets this very well is Juan Bautista Alberdi, the writer of our Constitution, who said that in the Declaration of Rights, in the Argentine Constitution, Alberdi lists those 6 genes in the Declaration of Rights. In Article 14 to 20 of the Constitution, he refers to those genes that will give rise to the different bodies of rules at a cultural, political, social, and economic level. He says the Declaration of Rights should be a fortress that cannot be penetrated. Notice that for the Declaration of Rights, he's asking the same as the cell does for the chromosome. There is a core and a nuclear membrane protecting the core from any alteration. This is what Alberdi is asking for in connection with the Declaration of Rights. To avoid, he says, that men in the name of the state may attack other men. He says, In Article 14, that is the right to work and make use and dispose of the fruits of that work, I have put an iron paddock to the advances of socialism. That's what he lived back in the 1850s. Had he lived later, he would have said the advances of socialism and capitalism. I mean, it is necessary to get away from that in order to punish the freedom of men through taxation. This is very important. He then goes on to say, I asked the politicians of the future to maintain this DNA of civilization unaltered in furtherance of peace and progress. For this to work at a biology level, it has to be integrated with Article 28, the principle of non-contradiction, whereby each piece of law that is passed should be replicated on those 6 articles on that genetic DNA, so that no law that is passed may contradict these principles. That role would be monitored through the legal control of constitutionality or constitutional control. And judicial review. He says, law became as attractive to me as the most interesting phenomena in nature. He noticed some similarities between natural law and he noticed that whatever he had studied in the code took him away from that. So everything had to be subject to research, to progressing using the same scientific method used by biological sciences today. He did not witness the development of this method, and it's true that social sciences have tried to imitate this, but the result has been extraordinarily scarce, not to say negligible. The downside of this, and based on the Napoleon Code, he says, codes have become some kind of legal government program whereby the state repeals everything that is not included there. That is, we are moving from the situation where there was the rule of law, which regulated the actions of men so that they would not attack other men in the name of the state. That is, the rule of law. Law was above governors and rulers, to this situation which provides for the ruling of legislation. That is, decisions that the rulers have to be observed and supersede the law. After the law, the law may say what the ruler says at any given time. So we see here a significant shift, and the result is predictable. And Juan Bautista Alberdi would predict this later on when he criticized the Argentine Civil Code, saying that it was a counter-revolution to the principles of the May or the French Revolution. That is, going back to the barbarian law of the Romans. Let's see now what happened with that principle which should govern the economy. We see that the origin of states in all primitive societies, including in any kind of society, a club, a gated community, whatever society you may think of, people will contribute as a function of the area being used. That is only logical. In primitive societies, this was exactly the same. In Greece, in Rome, and we see already that these economic principles turned towards convenience. Let's take the example of Greece. After proper government, said Plato, the government of patriots, of patriot families, the ones that had given rise to city-states, it was them who held the government and who supported the state. When the Eupatrias law was enacted by the time of Theseus, patriot families stepped behind from government and gave protagonism to the peoples and to economic forces. And we see that when they left, they took away the rent and forced new governments to implement taxation systems to punish labor, production, and surely consumption. That resulted in the stagnation that Greece suffered and the subsequent collapse of the Greek Empire. And this is similar to the state we have now in Argentina, a state of constant tension. Let's take an in-depth look at what happened in Rome. The propetas was the rent system in Rome. They detected which were the productive properties of land, just like we do today to detect the worth of a mine or of an oil well. And in doing so, we see what resources may be derived, or in the case of a pond, for example, what fish production may be obtained from it. The idea was to determine on the land what were the production capabilities of that piece of land, the properties. And based on that, they applied the propieta, which was some sort of rent. By the year 350 AC, the patrician families stepped back and a law was enacted that gave the peoples the government in exchange for the patrician families retaining the land and owning the land and the rent derived from it. And not only the piece of land that a man may need for his or her survival, but making land and land ownership a business.
And these give rise to the famous phrase, land owning will cause the decline and fall of Rome. So the tribunes of the people start to govern Rome, but they do not have resources because landowners had took all the resources for them. So 100 years after, the first civil wars erupted. The first one in 130 before Christ, with Tiberius Gracchus being killed, with 300 senators after him being thrown into the river. Some years after, trying to lay a restriction, his brother, Caius Gracchus, was also killed once again by blows on their own heads. And in this way, Rome started its decline and later fall. Imperial peace was in fact impossible to be maintained. So this phenomenon was also seen by the Jews. Rent is called ransom, and Yahweh says in Leviticus 25, it says, "This land is mine," Yahweh says, telling his sons, "You are pilgrims and strangers to me." He doesn't call them sons or daughters of God. They are just pilgrims, aliens, strangers, because of the land. And if they own land, they should pay ransom, so to speak, in the sense of paying rent. Think about the Roman proprietas, or ownership system, land ownership system in Argentina, and Alberdi is not studied here at the School of Law as such. It has disappeared, the idea of codes being common in the field of law and in the field of biology. When Christianity emerged it brought a message to end with the cruel taxation system based on Roman laws, pursuing and chasing workers all the time. Let us mention the case of Spartacus, his father being killed, crucified because he had not paid taxes. That reality, the one of Spartacus, generated 6,000 crucified and more than 30,000 killed people after the Roman revolt against forced taxation. This is the reason why they wanted to change this system into a peaceful, egalitarian taxation system. When revolutions break out, they are based on these ideas. I won't go into details because Fred Harrison mentioned all these details very well yesterday. The latest rent-based system was emphyteusis in Argentina in the times of the so-called May Revolution. These were the times of independence war. They try to change the rent-based system, which was then, of course, enshrined by the Constitution in Argentina, which was passed in the year 1853. Of course, the government must, of course, base himself, when they want to collect taxes, on this type of taxation system. When the rent-based system vanished, this new taxation system emerged. Murray Rothbard says taxation is merely robbery at great, colossal scale. Criminals cannot even think of such an appropriation system. It is a coercive appropriation of property or subjects of the state, of any state. Mr. Alberdi, who in the Article 14 of the Argentinian Constitution put that lock I mentioned before to the possibility that the state may chase citizens by exerting upon them excessive pressure based on taxation. Of course, you have to bear in mind that we have taxes that are constitutional as well. But it is worthwhile mentioning that the rent-based system is the origin of that genetic principle, so to speak. Principles such as the following: freedom and liberty. You are free man if you are available to make the most of your own income, to make decisions. So the idea of being free is connected with the idea of your possibility to make appropriate use of your available resources. So you can make whatever you want with the income that you receive from your own work. Of course, we have liberty and freedom on top of this list. Then we have equality. Of course, we are all equal if we are owners of the income that we receive from our own work. This is enshrined in our constitution in Argentina. Then we come brotherhood. We have brotherhood of mud, fraternity, liberty, equality, and fraternity, which is based on productivity, on sharing what we have, a virtuous society, and last but not least, the Constitution, which is a code of principles, very similar to a biological code. When you wave to the right to have this race-based system, so to speak, you have a new taxation system emerging. And you can see different scenarios. Bondage. You are a slave to the state because, of course, the state is taking more than 60% of the income received by workers. This gives rise to huge inequality because one social group is appropriating itself of any kind of public income. I mean, one part of the society is really enjoying the fruits of the work that is being done by the rest of the population. Of course, the society is progressing, the value of land is increasing, and richer people become even richer, and poor people become even poorer. And of course, this is the phenomenon that has been called as progress and poverty, and thus tension between the right and the left. The right wants equality before the law. What law? The Roman law, which is basically unfair because it allows the appropriation of rent. And of course, the right wants to maintain this barbarian system. The left doesn't know how to come out of that predicament, and they will try to, through legislation, to make things equal, accounts equal. And of course, here we have the legislative power. Savigny did not see this scenario, and yesterday Hector mentioned the 27,000 laws that were enacted in Argentina in order to sustain a barbarian system in Argentina. Of course, this has to do with a civil constitution, which is in fact a government program. We call it positive law because it is based on the imperial law institution legis ponere. He who has the law sets the laws that will govern that society. And of course, this gives rise to inequality, then to violence, from violence to civil war, and last but not least, from civil war to war among states. Of course, every day we can see people's armies with sticks and masks invade the city of Buenos Aires peacefully, saying, here we are warning you, people in the academia, do something, give us solution. You politicians, you government officials, try to find solutions to our problems. And this is the reason why I say that in Argentina, we're always living on an intermittent state of war where there are different outbreaks of violence every now and then. This phenomenon, which was very clear in France 200 years ago, because the regime was creating inequalities, and it was the seeds of the French Revolution, went on declining and diminishing, being cushioned by the effects of the Industrial Revolution in the field of biology, applied sciences, hard sciences, which allowed the possibility to support more people. But globalization and societal progress has led us into a pre-revolutionary scenario, as it happened before the French Revolution. And let's take into account what Alberdi mentioned, absolute daughter of the May Revolution in Argentina, absolute daughter of free work, modern wealth, escaped from the Roman law, which did not pay honor and tribute to the work because they levied taxes on citizens, and they honored plunder and political bribery because, of course, they admitted that the society be based on rent seeking. If you rethink this statement by Mr. Alberdi, you can see that he has rejected the Roman political system because that system led into political crisis, violence, and last but not least, to final decline and fall of the Roman Empire. No one has a crystal ball to foresee. Alberti didn't have a crystal ball, but he could understand what was going on. In Rome, they said, you should work and you will die. They degraded work as such. And Tiberius Gracchus, the two brothers that were killed by the Italian or Roman senators, they say, how on earth can rats and animals have a place to give birth to their own offspring, and we don't have that? Brazilians in their own forests, Spanish in the desert people, have 1 million or more than 1 million housing units empty. If we analyze current times, we are going to see the following scenario. These are the messages by Wall Street. We don't produce anything, Gordon Gekko says. We just possess, we own. This is the predator culture advocated by Fred Harrison. But is Gordon Gekko to be blamed for this? No, he is living under a law system whereby everyone says, no, don't work. You're an idiot if you work. You're a slave. Don't worry about working. So you can buy a piece of land, and after 3 years' time, you're going to have the price of that land increasing by 3 times. That's wonderful business. And what we are doing there by this resolution, we are condemning thousands of people to our own fellow men, so to speak, to living in shanty towns, to be poor, because one generation is stealing the opportunities to develop to another generation. And what the worker says, the two guys at the bottom of this are two union leaders who always says the following: in this country, no one can make money by working. A country that has, of course, praised Roman law and degraded work cannot have the end that Argentina is having, like Spain and Italy: crisis, decline, and fall. Promulgating this civil code means to be changing the foundations for land ownership, because in the 1930 we levied a tax on land, and then these taxes became 85 taxes in the course of time. He said that they had to change the overall contract system, the powers granted to government officials. And he says the civil code created by Willis Sarfield will end up in a unitarian civil code, whereas the Argentinian constitution is a federalist constitution. So he was foreseeing, Alberti, that the Roman law was leading we Argentinians into a civil war, as it is now happening with our land, with our big companies. We are opening up our frontiers to foreigners that are reaping the fruits of our work. And Alberti said that the civil code was anti-democratic, that it was inconsistent with the fundamental law of Argentina, the Constitution. And how on earth can we have a civil code where rights are inconsistent with one another and with the rights enshrined in the Federalist Constitution? So we are creating a hierarchical, class-based system, and will lead Argentina to civil war. And that civil code is the civil code that we teach here at the School of Law in the United States, at the New York University, where they grant PhD studies in this barbarian law system, the civil law system based on the Roman law system. And of course, the idea of barbarian Romans creating this code is the seed of these civil codes that were then created in many other societies. Think about the Middle Ages, Spain, the Salamanca School of Law, and all the experiences that have been replicated worldwide. This is the great tragedy of law. My presentation has a title, and the title is Academy's Responsibility in the Corruption of Economic, Moral, and Political Sciences and History. Of course, we could clearly foresee the final outcomes and results of all these moves, but even lawyers cannot see the results. Now, if we have a rent-based system, think about Rome, rents. Rents give right to the Republic, the Roman Republic. Then you have Republic, you have Federation, because rents are collected by municipalities. When somebody asked Fred Harrison yesterday if we were going back to the country, if there was a sort of urban-rural migration. Of course, this will finally happen because municipalities will attract people and destroy all these imperial heads that we have seen in the main national and provincial capital cities. Of course, out of the rent-based system, we have Republic, Federation, then democracy. But our democracy, to say, is a sort of Caesar-like democracy, because powers and resources lie in the different municipalities. Do you remember when the Roman Empire fell, it was broken up into pieces, and those pieces were small feuds, like our own municipalities today. And then we have seen nationalisms emerge, tragic phenomena. It was a sort of integration toward national or nation states. And of course, this gives rights to civilization, but these are not laptops, ships, or airplanes. Civilization, which means security over life and the fruits of the work done by people, as Alberdi has very well put it.
This will result in a society that would enjoy high productivity and quality of life. When you resign to the rent system because the predator culture takes it away with him, then the taxation system comes up, and this gives rise to tyranny, to union. In the case of our states, the nation. In the United States, union meant the destruction of individual freedoms and a concentration of power in the hands of a single state. As we'll see, Jefferson put it. Democracy is Caesarian in the sense that it is appointed by a majority, as it was the case with the Caesar, but the system is clearly anti-democratic. Law will disappear, and what there will be is obligations. We saw this clearly with the statement by the dean here. An academic from New York University came to say that relative rights are paid with taxes. If they are paid with taxes, they are obligations. So rights disappeared with the rent system, and this school should come to be known as an obligations school. Why is that? 40 years ago, taxation was just one topic in syllabus, the public finance syllabus. It was just one chapter. To graduate as a lawyer, you have to take 4 courses on taxation and another 4 on administrative law. This cave, therefore, has become a school of obligations, not of rights. And of course, results could not be otherwise. low productivity, low quality of life societies. And see what Jefferson says. I strongly believe that a consolidated government, that is the Union, will become the most corrupt on earth. Why would he say that? Because of the Argentinian national government or the state of the United States, or all national governments? And then Madison says, quote, consolidation in its current and controversial application means destruction of states by transferring powers to the government of the Union. This is the new freedom that started back in the USA with Lincoln and here with Mitre, nationalism, and also in France and elsewhere. So we see here two antagonistic systems. What are the consequences? This lack of order in the rent system and the strong presence of taxation gives rise to different aberrant situations. Injustice, inflation, deflation, unemployment, poverty, slums, concentration of wealth, monopoly, migration, immigration, massive migration, all of which will become ever underscored, because when hordes progress